My name is Naomi Keller, and I turned 72 this spring. I live alone now in a weathered but sturdy house in Charleston, South Carolina, a place where the front porch still creaks like an old friend, and the sweet tea stays cold a little too long. My days are quiet, too quiet if I'm honest. The kind of quiet that hums in your ears and makes you miss even the sound of an argument. I used to chase after noise, laughter, chaos, a good mess. Back then, my husband Sam would hum Al Green in the kitchen while our son Julian zoomed his toy race cars down the hallway, and I hollered at them both to wipe their feet before trampling the new rug. That was life, full and loud and honest. Now just the ticking of the grandfather clock and the occasional sigh from my aging knees when I bend down to reach the lowest cabinet. I lost Sam 17 years ago, just like that. One minute we were sipping coffee on the back porch, watching the sunrise turn the sky into sherbet. The next, I was clutching his lifeless hand and trying to remember how to breathe. Sam wasn't a man of many words. He said I love you by fixing the wobbly banister or filling up my gas tank before I even noticed it was low. He was solid. And when he left, the foundation cracked beneath my feet. Julian was 42 then, well into his career as a healthcare consultant, married to a woman named Alyssa. A woman I respected, though I can't say I ever knew her. They had a son, my only grandson Theo. At Sam's funeral, Julian barely shed a tear. He stood still as a lamppost beside the casket, while I sobbed like someone had ripped the sun out of the sky. That night, while I reheated casseroles that neighbors dropped off, Julian finally said, "Mom, we can't live in grief. You gotta let it go. Let it go. How do you let go of a man you shared every sunrise with?" I didn't argue. I just nodded. That was the first time I felt the thread between us tug, not snap, just fray. 3 years later, Julian and Alyssa split. Irreconcilable differences, he said. She moved to Asheville. We never talked much after. I only learned they'd finalized the divorce from Theo, who still called every Sunday and insisted on helping me fix the porch light or figure out why my TV remote stopped obeying. Julian, though, he got busier. He started traveling for work or so, he said. I rarely saw him. When he did stop by, it was always rushed. Phone in one hand, watch glancing every few seconds. I remember one visit clearly. I'd made his favorite shrimp and grits, and as he poked at it, barely tasting anything, I asked Jules, "Do you ever miss being close to me?" He looked up, expression unreadable. "Ma, I still come around. I still check in. What else do you need?" "Your presence, your heart." But I didn't say that, because mothers don't beg for crumbs of affection. Time passed. Theo went off to college, majoring in sustainable design. Smart boy, thoughtful. He never forgot birthdays or Mother's Day. He even taught me how to use email properly without typing everything in the subject line. Then came the bombshell on a rainy Wednesday afternoon when Theo swung by unannounced. He poured himself a cup of tea and said, "Grandma Dad's getting married again." The teacup in my hand paused midair. "To who?" "A woman named Karina. She's different." He shrugged. "Works in cosmetic dentistry. Has a daughter. They come as a pair." I didn't react right away. I've learned that silence says more than tears ever could. "Do you like her?" I finally asked. Theo hesitated. "She's polished. Sweet in public. Real sharp when no one's watching. You know the type." I nodded. "Oh, I knew that type. I'd grown up with girls like that." "They're planning a big wedding," he added, "and Dad might ask you for help." There it was. But Julian didn't call himself. No. He sent Theo like a polite messenger in a royal court. "Sweetheart," I said gently, "I raised a man who used to call me after bad dreams. Now he needs me for money, but won't even dial the number." Theo looked away. I told him not to ask. "You've done enough. You should spend your money on yourself. You've earned that." I laughed softly. "Money's for family. What good's a bank account if it doesn't hold love?" But something inside me tensed. A week later, as if right on cue, Julian called. "Hey, Ma," he said in that voice I hadn't heard since high school, all smooth and practiced. "How's your arthritis?" he asked. "Manageable." "What do you need?" A beat of silence. Then came the pitch. "I'm getting married in 2 months. Karina's amazing, Ma. We're doing a big wedding this time. A real celebration. But I'm in a tight spot financially. How much I asked already, knowing it'd be more than I could justify. He gave a number, a 5-digit number, one that made my stomach twist. But I said yes. Why? Because I still held on to hope. Hope that maybe this wedding would repair whatever cracked between us, that maybe this woman was just misunderstood, that maybe Julian, my boy, still had some softness in him. I wrote the check, and then another. And then came the updates, not requests. Orders. The florist was changed. The photographer was upgraded. Karina's daughter needed a custom-made dress. Could I cover that too? And through it all, Karina never called me mom. Never even Naomi. Always Miss Keller, like I was the hired help. Still I smiled. Still I showed up. Until the meeting at the venue. That day, I wore my best lilac dress. The one Sam said made my eyes look like spring. I pinned on the brooch he gave me on our 30th anniversary. A pearl with a gold rim. Simple. Timeless. Karina met me at the estate doors, all red lipstick and manicured smiles. She hugged air near my cheek and said, "We've already started, Miss Keller. Come along." Julian barely looked up from the seating chart when I entered. I stood beside them as they discussed canapes and signature cocktails. I smiled through every suggestion, offered help with the music, the flowers, anything. Karina placed a hand on my arm. "Oh no, we've got it under control. Just relax and enjoy being a guest. A guest. At my own son's wedding." As we toured the space, I asked about the head table. "Oh," Karina said lightly. "We thought you'd be more comfortable near the back. Table 9. It's closest to the restroom. Easier for, you know." She didn't say old, but the air did. I looked at Julian, hoping he'd step in. He didn't. And that was when I felt it. This wedding wasn't a bridge, it was a burial. They weren't bringing me into their lives. They were placing me politely on the outskirts like a photo frame that doesn't match the new decor. But I smiled. I swallowed it down. Because I still believed desperately that if I did everything right, maybe I'd be seen. I didn't know then that my silence was just sharpening the knife, but I was about to find out. The morning of the wedding, I was up before the sun. Not because I was excited, no, I hadn't slept at all. Nerves had camped out in my chest, and no amount of chamomile tea or deep breathing could chase them away. I ironed my lilac dress again, even though it was already wrinkle-free. Polished my modest heels until they shone like I was trying to make them worthy of the occasion. The pearl brooch sat waiting on my vanity, and I paused before pinning it to my dress. I looked in the mirror and said quietly, "You belong here, Naomi. Don't let them convince you otherwise." At 8:45 sharp, a black town car arrived outside my house. Julian had arranged it. "So you don't have to worry about parking," he said. I stepped into the car, with the envelope resting gently in my lap, the final check wrapped in silver ribbon like a wedding gift. My last offering, my last olive branch. The venue was already buzzing with movement when I arrived. Staff zipped by with trays of flower silverware and towering cakes. No one greeted me. No one even seemed to notice me. Eventually, a woman in a headset who looked barely older than Theo gave me a forced smile and said, "Miss Keller, you'll be waiting in the library. Tea and pastries are inside." "Library?" I blinked. "Can I see my son?" She shook her head politely. "He's asked not to be disturbed. Groom's nerves." "Karina. She's in the bridal suite, also closed." "Of course." So I sat in that too-quiet room, staring out the window at the rows of white chairs lined up on the lawn. They looked like tombstones to me, each one a symbol of something I used to have with Julian that now lay buried under formality and floral arrangements. I sipped the tea. It tasted like regret. An hour later, a young man in a crisp black suit came to escort me outside. The guests had started arriving, all dressed to the nines, faces glowing with the joy of being seen, of belonging. I recognized almost no one. A few nodded politely, most smiled in that empty way people do when they can't place your name, but assume they probably should. I was guided to my seat, front row at least. Not near the restroom, not yet invisible. Julian stepped out first, and for a moment, the sight of him nearly undid me. He looked proud sharp, like the man I used to picture when he was 10, saying he'd be a businessman someday. And for a brief second, he looked right at me. I smiled. He didn't. Then Karina arrived. Her gown was extravagant lace and crystals that caught the sunlight and tossed it in all directions like confetti. Her makeup was flawless. Her expression was triumphant. The ceremony was picture perfect. Not a flower out of place, not a word misspoken. They kissed. Applause erupted, and I clapped too quietly, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. I felt like a guest at a movie premiere, applauding actors in a story I had no part in writing. After the ceremony came the cocktail hour. I drifted to the edge of the crowd beneath the shade of an old magnolia tree. My spot. Always on the edge. I watched as people laughed and drank, posed for photos. No one looked my way. Until Theo found me. "There you are," he said, breaking into a grin. "Why are you hiding, Grandma?" "I'm not hiding, just staying out of the way. You're the mother of the groom." I didn't say anything. He stared at me for a second, then slipped his arm around my shoulder. "You look beautiful," he whispered. When they started calling guests for photos, I lingered nearby, waiting to be summoned. I never was. Karina posed with her mother, her daughter, her cousins. Julian smiled in every shot. I hovered until someone gently told me, "They're just doing bridal party for now." I didn't ask again. Dinner followed. Table 8, just as promised. All the way in the corner. I sat next to Karina's uncle, who talked about cryptocurrency and barbecue in the same breath. Across from me was her great aunt, who wore sunglasses indoors and never once acknowledged me. From my seat, I could barely hear the toasts. Karina's father spoke lovingly about his daughter's ambition. Her cousin cracked jokes that made the room erupt with laughter. Julian's best friend toasted the man who works too much and loves even harder. There was no mention of me. No acknowledgement that I had funded this entire display of affection that I was excluded from. After dessert, I stepped outside. The air was cooler now. The arch still stood drenched in soft golden light. I stood beneath it and closed my eyes, trying to imagine Sam's voice saying, "You did what you could, baby." Then I heard heels clicking behind me. "There you are." Karina. She stood barefoot now, holding a champagne flute, her tiara slightly crooked. Her tone wasn't angry, not yet. Just sharp enough to draw blood. "You've been hiding all night," she said. "Just needed some air." "A beautiful day," she said, her smile curling at the edges. "Until now." I opened my eyes. "What do you mean? You just couldn't help yourself, could you?" Showing up early, looking all delicate so everyone whispers about the poor old mother. I blinked. I didn't know being early was a crime. "You know exactly what you're doing," she snapped. "You're trying to ruin my day. I've stayed out of the way all day. I paid for this wedding and didn't even—" "Don't bring up money," she hissed, stepping closer. "You think that gives you control? You think you can buy Julian's love?" The crowd near the doors grew quiet. Heads turned. A few gasped. Julian stepped through the archway. "What's going on?" Karina turned to him. "She's trying to make a scene. She's embarrassing me." Julian looked at me, really looked, and then said the words that will echo in my bones forever. "Ma, maybe it's best if you leave." I just stared. "You've seen the ceremony. Let's not make this harder." So I smiled, straightened my dress, and said congratulations to you both. Then I walked away past the crowd of silent guests, past the lights and laughter, out into the night. Only Theo tried to stop me. "Grandma, please." I kissed his cheek and said, "You're not losing me." The rest. They let me disappear. The next morning, I woke up to a silence that didn't feel peaceful. It was the kind that fills a room like smoke, thick and choking. My phone was still off. I had left it face down on the kitchen counter the night before and hadn't touched it since coming home. Not because I forgot, because I knew what would be waiting. I made myself a cup of tea, I didn't drink, and sat by the window watching the neighbor's cat chase something it couldn't catch. I'd paid for a wedding I wasn't welcome at. Funded a celebration, I was asked to leave. And the worst part wasn't even the humiliation, it was the quiet, firm choice my son had made. He had picked silence over his mother, comfort over courage. Eventually, I turned my phone on. It buzzed to life like a hive disturbed. 13 missed calls, 10 messages, 3 voicemails. All from Julian. A few from an unfamiliar number, which I later realized was the venue's office. I didn't open any of them right away. I already knew what they said. What I hadn't anticipated was how little I wanted to hear it. Finally, I clicked on one of the texts. "Ma, we need to talk. Please call me back. There's an issue with the final venue payment. They said you froze the transfer. Another one, you signed the contract as sponsor. They're saying legal action is possible. Please clarify ASAP." So that was what it came down to. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "Are you okay?" Just panic. About money. About appearances. About things that were never really mine to carry, but somehow always landed on my shoulders. The doorbell rang 20 minutes later. 3 quick knocks in a row. Julian. He didn't wait for me to open it. Still had the spare key. Still let himself in like this was his home, not mine. He slammed the door behind him, frustration radiating off of him like heat from a stovetop. "Why didn't you answer your phone?" he demanded. I stayed seated at the kitchen table, calm. Too calm, maybe. "Good morning, Julian." He ran a hand through his hair. "This isn't the time for pleasantries. The venue says you've halted the final payment. They're threatening legal action. They're emailing me non-stop." "That's correct," I said, setting my teacup down. He blinked. "What do you mean, correct? I no longer intend to pay the remainder." His mouth fell open. "You can't be serious. You promised. You said—" "I said I would help with your wedding," I replied, my voice steady. I didn't agree to bankroll a celebration where I'd be treated like an afterthought. Julian groaned and started pacing. It was one misunderstanding. Karina had too much to drink. She got emotional. "You know how stressful weddings are. And you," I asked, "what excuse do you have?" "You were sober. You saw what happened. You watched her humiliate me and said nothing." He stopped pacing. I didn't want to cause a scene. "No," I said, "you just wanted me to be quiet." Julian sighed, suddenly looking tired. "This isn't about you. The wedding was for us, for our future. We needed it to go well. And it did," I said bitterly. "Except for the part where you told your mother to leave before the cake was even cut." He exhaled sharply. "Look, I know things got complicated, but please just pay the rest. The contract is in your name. If you refuse, the venue could sue. Our reputation, my job could be at risk." I looked at him then. Really looked. The tailored suit from the night before. The expensive shoes. The designer watch that probably cost more than my last car. All of it built on foundations I had laid, and now he was asking for more. "I'm not paying," I said. His eyes narrowed. "So you're just going to sabotage everything out of spite?" "This isn't sabotage," I said softly. "It's consequence." He stared at me in disbelief. "Do you know how bad this makes me look?" "I know how bad it made me feel," I replied. He slammed his palm on the table. "You're being selfish!" There it was. The word that had hung in the air for years. The one people toss at women when they finally stop bleeding themselves dry for others. I stood slowly, leveling my gaze with his. Selfish. He opened his mouth, but I didn't let him speak. "Let's talk about selfish. When your car broke down and you couldn't get to work, I paid for repairs. When your first marriage fell apart and you needed somewhere to stay, I cleared out the guest room. When you wanted to buy that condo, I gave you the down payment from my retirement. And when you decided to throw a $50,000 wedding you couldn't afford, I said yes again." He took a step back, ashamed, "But now I say one no after being publicly disrespected, and I'm selfish." He didn't answer. I walked to the sideboard and picked up the envelope. "The final check is still in here," I said. "Unopened. Untouched. But it stays that way." He looked at me like he didn't recognize who I was anymore. That made 2 of us. "This isn't just about money, Julian," I continued. "It's about dignity. I've spent my whole life giving. I raised you with my bare hands and half a nurse's salary. But you stood next to a woman who belittled me and said nothing. And now you want me to keep giving like none of it mattered." "I had to choose," he muttered, "between peace and conflict." "No," I said gently. "You chose between comfort and courage, and you picked the easier one." He turned away, defeated, and left without another word. That afternoon, a woman in a navy blazer came to my door, a representative from the venue, professional smile clipboard in hand. "Miss Keller, I'm here regarding the outstanding payment. Can we discuss resolution?" "We can," I said, "but I don't intend to pay it." She blinked. "May I ask why?" "I paid with the understanding I would be respected. Instead, I was excluded and dismissed. I didn't receive what was promised. That's not a service I fund." She took notes, nodded, and said there may be legal consequences. "So be it," I replied. After she left, I called Mr. Brigham, my lawyer, since Sam passed, and scheduled a meeting to update my will. Then I sat down and wrote a letter to myself. Not a will, not a journal. Just a reminder. You did your best. You gave more than most. And when the time came, you chose yourself. You stood up not out of pride, but out of peace. Theo came by that evening. He brought pastries and a quiet look in his eyes. We didn't say much at first. He poured us tea. We sat in silence. Then he said, "Dad's furious. Karina's talking about cutting me off if I keep visiting you." I smiled. "And what did you say?" I told them I don't take orders from people who can't manage their own bills. That made me laugh, for real this time. A deep, shaking laugh that felt like a spring finally bursting through frozen ground. "I'm proud of you, Theo," I said. "You should be proud of yourself, Grandma," he replied. "You finally stood up for you." 6 weeks passed. Not a word from Julian, not a text, not even one of those half-hearted hope you're okay messages he used to send when guilt got the better of him. At first, I checked my phone often, then less. Eventually, I stopped looking at all. There's something strange about silence when you've lived most of your life being pulled in every direction. At first, it feels like punishment, then like possibility. I started sleeping through the night again. Long, uninterrupted sleep with no worrying over money or lists or how to keep a grown son from falling apart. I started waking up not out of duty, but because the sunlight streaming through the kitchen window actually looked inviting. One morning, as I sat on the porch with my tea finally still hot, I realized something simple and heartbreaking. I had spent so long giving everything to my son, I had forgotten what it felt like to belong to myself. That week, I met with Mr. Brigham to finalize the new will. I sat across from his polished oak desk, hands folded calmly in my lap, while he adjusted his glasses and read through the documents. I'd rerouted everything: my accounts, my house, my insurance policies, no longer centered around Julian. I had rewritten my future with the same steady hand I once used to pack his lunches and write tuition checks. When Mr. Brigham asked, "Are you sure about this, Naomi?" I just nodded. "I'm not trying to punish him," I said. "I'm just done writing blank checks to people who don't see me." He gave a small smile, signed the papers, and shook my hand longer than usual. I think that's the wisest thing I've heard in a long time. The following Sunday, Theo stopped by again. He brought Thai food, the spicy kind I couldn't handle but loved trying anyway, and we sat cross-legged on the living room floor with old jazz playing softly in the background. He told me about school, about a girl he liked and who worked at the bookstore, about how Karina had locked him out of the family's group chat because he chose the wrong side. I asked him if he felt angry. At first he admitted, "But now I think I'm just disappointed. They always expected you to just show up. No questions asked. But when you finally didn't, they didn't know what to do." I nodded, reaching for the spring rolls. Sometimes people confuse your silence for agreement. Then they get shocked when your silence turns into a boundary. He grinned. "You've been hanging around self-help podcasts or something." "No," I said, smiling back, "just thinking a lot." That night, after Theo left, I opened my laptop and logged into a real estate listing site. For months, I had toyed with the idea. Downsizing, starting fresh. The house felt too big, too quiet, too full of history that no longer felt like it belonged to me. Every creaky floorboard echoed with memories, some sweet, some heavy. Sam's old wrench set still hung in the shed. Julian's third-grade trophy still sat on the mantel like a relic of a time when I felt like I mattered. I spent the whole week sorting through drawers, closets, letters, and photo albums. Some things I kept, others I donated. I packed with care, not sorrow. On the morning I handed the keys to the young couple buying the place, their toddler reached for my hand and asked if the yard had fairies in it. I smiled and said, "Not anymore." But it used to. That night I slept in a small apartment on the 3rd floor of a sunny building overlooking Milestone Park. A fraction of the size, 100 times the piece. I bought the place outright, no mortgage, no stress. And with what I had left from the house sale, I finally had a proper retirement cushion. Not a big one, but solid enough to feel secure. For the first time in my life, I had money that didn't have a name on it. Money that didn't already belong to someone else's emergency. That was a feeling I hadn't known in decades. My days started to fill up in new ways. I joined a community center a few blocks away, signed up for a digital literacy course taught by a bright-eyed woman half my age who looked at us like we were miracles in motion. I wasn't the oldest, and to my surprise, I wasn't even the slowest. I learned how to use cloud storage, organize files, even make digital greeting cards. Then I volunteered to help the next class. Just once a week at first, then more. One of my students was a retired school principal trying to email his grandson a birthday video. We worked through it step by step, and when that message finally sent, he looked at me with tears in his eyes. "You have no idea how long I've waited to feel useful again," he said. I patted his shoulder and smiled. Oh, I think I do. I also restarted my gardening blog. Loretta's Blooms had been my little side hobby since Theo taught me to upload pictures from my tablet. I used to write short posts about basil and tomato rot and how to coax hydrangeas into behaving. After the wedding fallout, I wrote one called The Plant That Grew Back After I Cut It Off. It was about pruning, yes, but also about motherhood, about giving and regrowth. That post tripled my followers in a week. Strangers messaged me to say they saw themselves in every sentence. One woman wrote, "You just helped me make peace with the daughter who stopped calling." Another wrote, "Your words reminded me that I deserve sunlight too." One day, while browsing through blog comments, I noticed a new name, Doris M. Her message was short but kind. "Thank you for this. I've been feeling invisible lately." Something about it felt familiar. We ended up exchanging emails, then coffee invites. Doris turned out to be a retired literature professor who lived 2 buildings over. Widowed witty with a silver pixie cut that made her look like she ran her own book club empire. We started meeting every Sunday. Sometimes at my place, sometimes hers. We talked about everything poetry, marriage grief, and what it means to start over at 78. "You know," Doris said one morning, watching a squirrel steal a peanut from her balcony, "I used to think my life ended when my husband passed, but now I think it just got quiet enough for me to hear myself." I nodded. "That's exactly it." She raised her coffee mug in a toast. To quiet beginnings. It wasn't long before Robert showed up. He was tall, soft-spoken, with a gray beard and an old stethoscope charm hanging from his keychain. A retired cardiologist. He came to one of my digital literacy sessions and sat in the back taking notes like he was cramming for finals. After class, he approached me with a gentle smile. "You're Naomi Keller, right? We worked together once years ago. I was a new resident. You were already a legend in the ER." I laughed. Legend is a stretch. I just didn't faint during trauma codes. He offered to buy me coffee. I said yes. Then I said yes again the next week. Then I said yes to a jazz show and an outdoor film screening and one long evening stargazing from his rooftop, wrapped in blankets, passing thermoses of cocoa back and forth like teenagers. "I thought I'd be too tired for this kind of joy," I told him once. He shook his head. "It's not about energy, it's about timing. Some joy only finds you when you're finally still enough to feel it." He held my hand gently, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to earn affection, I just had to accept it. The days passed slow and sweet. Not empty, just unhurried. There was something sacred about waking up with no one demanding a piece of me. My mornings belonged to my tea, my balcony garden, and my old gospel records. In the quiet, I found pieces of myself I hadn't heard in years, my thoughts, my breath, even my laughter. Some mornings, Robert would drop by with bagels. Other mornings, Doris would wave from across the street, holding a book in one hand and a thermos of coffee in the other. It was ordinary magic, really. A life finally shaped around peace instead of obligation. Then came the text. It arrived late on a Tuesday. My phone buzzed once, lighting up the dim kitchen counter as I washed dishes after dinner. I dried my hands, picked it up, and saw his name, Julian. 4 letters that once meant everything. The message read, "Ma, I'm sorry. Please, can we talk?" I stared at it for a long while. I didn't feel anger, not anymore. Just caution, like touching a stove that once burned you. I put the phone down and made tea instead. The message stayed unanswered for 2 days. Then another arrived. "I miss you. I didn't handle things right. Camille, everything's different now." Different. That word sat heavy in my chest. I thought of the look in his eyes when he told me to leave, of how he didn't hesitate, not even for a moment. I remembered the check I had folded ribboned and tucked away, a gift he never even opened. That memory stung more than any insult. Still, some part of me, the part shaped like a mother, leaned toward the thought of reconciliation. I called Theo. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey, Grandma, everything okay?" "I got a message," I said softly. "From your father." He was quiet a moment. "You going to reply?" "I don't know, should I?" Theo sighed. "I think you should do whatever brings you peace. But if you're asking me, I don't think he's changed, not really. I think life just got hard without your wallet around. That's what I'm afraid of." Theo paused, his voice gentler this time. "But if there's something you still need to say for yourself, say it. Not for him, for you." That stayed with me. 3 days later, I sent one reply. You can come by Saturday, 2 p.m. Not before, not with Camille. I didn't know if he'd show. But at 1:57, I heard a knock at the door. He looked smaller somehow, not in size, but in energy, like someone who'd finally realized they weren't invincible. His suit was wrinkled hair, slightly unkempt, and for the first time in years, he didn't lead with performance. Hi, Ma, he said quietly. Come in, I replied, stepping aside. He walked in like he'd forgotten how. His eyes scanned the apartment, stopping at the plants on the balcony. The books stacked on the table. The framed photo of Theo and me smiling at the botanical gardens. Place looks nice, he said. It is. He sat on the edge of the couch like a schoolboy in the principal's office. I sat across from him waiting. He cleared his throat. I wanted to say I'm sorry. Really sorry. I was selfish and blind. I held up a hand. Let's not make this about Camille. This is about you and me. He nodded, folding his hands. I needed you to see me, I said slowly. Not just as a bank account. Not as someone who'd always say yes, but as your mother, a woman who gave up pieces of herself so you could have every chance in the world. I know, he said softly. I just didn't think about it like that. I was trying to build something big and impressive, and I thought that was love. But I think I got it all wrong. I looked at him. You didn't get it wrong. You just chose something else. And then you treated me like I was disposable. He swallowed hard. I was ashamed. After the wedding, when everything fell apart. Camille and I split 2 months later. She said I was no use to her without the lifestyle. Then she left. I'm sorry to hear that I said, and I meant it. Because even if he hurt me, no mother rejoices in her child's heartbreak. She took her daughter and her debt, he added. Left me with credit cards maxed, and no real home. I waited. I thought about calling sooner, but I didn't know if you'd ever want to see me again. I didn't either, I said. But here you are. He looked down, ashamed. Ma, I'm not here for money. I swear. I miss you. I miss how things used to be. I studied his face, older, more tired, but still carrying the same patterns. Maybe he'd felt pain, maybe even regret. But something in his eyes still wanted to be rescued. You want things to be how they were, I said gently. But I don't. Because how they were cost me too much. He blinked, not expecting that. I forgave you already, I continued. But that doesn't mean things go back. I have boundaries now. I don't fund adult messes. I don't give what I can't afford to lose. I love you, Julian, but I won't abandon myself for that love anymore. He nodded slowly. I understand. We sat in silence for a while. No rage, no begging, just the weight of reality settling between us. Finally, I asked, how's Theo? He smiled almost sadly. He's doing good. He's strong, smarter than me. I smiled. He gets that from me. Julian laughed, a real one, small and cracked but honest. Then he stood up. Thank you for letting me come. I nodded. Take care of yourself. He walked to the door, paused, then turned around. If I ever wanted to visit, not to ask for anything, just to visit, would that be okay? That depends, I said, on whether you come as my son or as a stranger in need. He nodded again quietly. Understood. When the door closed behind him, I didn't cry. I didn't feel bitter. I just exhaled deeply, the kind of breath you didn't know you were holding for years. I wasn't sure if that would be the last time I'd see him, but I was sure of one thing: I had finally chosen myself. Not in anger, not in spite, but in quiet, grounded truth. That evening, Doris came over with lemon bars and 2 glasses of sangria. We sat on the balcony, watching the park lights flicker on. Guess who I ran into at the community center, she said. Your cardiologist friend. He asked about you. I smiled. Tell him I'm still alive and watering my herbs. She raised an eyebrow. Alive, that's what you're calling it now. We both laughed. Later, as I cleaned the dishes and the moon rose higher in the sky, I felt no pull toward the past. Only a steady, gentle presence in the now. The last text Julian sent came a week later. It read simply, "Thank you for your honesty. I hope one day I become worthy of it." I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't need to anymore. Spring melted into early summer, and with it came soft mornings, the kind that kissed your skin with light before you even opened your eyes. My balcony garden flourished, basil thick and fragrant tomatoes ripening under the sun, lavender sprigs dancing in the breeze, Peace had become a living thing in my life, not just an idea. It took shape in my routines, my laughter, and the way I didn't rush anymore. There was no longer a need to earn someone's love, no more bending to prove my worth. I woke up every day with the quiet certainty that I already was enough. Robert and I had found our rhythm. He'd knock every Thursday evening with takeout and some small, thoughtful surprise. A hand-picked book, a new flower for my railing planters, once even a handwritten poem folded inside a teabag box. We didn't label what we were. We didn't need to. There was trust, ease, and the kind of steady affection that didn't ask for more than what was freely given. One Saturday afternoon, as we sipped lemonade and watched the neighborhood kids chalk pictures on the sidewalk, he looked over and said, "Naomi, do you ever think about doing something wild?" I laughed. "Wild like what, getting a tattoo?" "Sure," he grinned. "Or maybe renting an RV and taking off for a few weeks." I blinked. "You want to travel with me? I want to experience life with someone who knows what it means to savor it." That night, I thought about it. I'd spent so much of my life anchored to duty. The idea of untethering, of just going for the sake of going, felt foreign and thrilling. So the next morning, I said yes. Not loudly, not with fanfare, just a simple yes over breakfast as the butter melted on our toast. 2 weeks later, we set off, a modest RV stocked with essentials maps, books, and good music. We didn't have a fixed route. We stopped when we were tired, explored when we were curious. In Asheville, we watched a bluegrass band in a park. In Savannah, we ate shrimp and grits so good I cried. Somewhere along the Alabama coast, Robert looked at me under the wide peach sunset and whispered, "You are not what I expected. You're better." It was the kind of compliment that didn't flatter, it rooted. We came home after 3 weeks sun-kissed and sore from laughter. Doris greeted us with iced tea and a raised brow. "You two look like teenagers hiding a secret." Robert just winked. Life didn't become perfect, but it became lighter. I kept teaching digital classes at the community center. My gardening blog crossed 50,000 subscribers. I even got invited to speak at a senior wellness conference about aging with joy, not apology. Me, a woman who once cried because her son didn't save her a seat, now standing in front of strangers telling them they deserve to take up space. One crisp morning in October, I received a letter. Not a text, not an email. An actual handwritten envelope. Inside was a folded piece of paper with clean cursive. From Julian. It read, "Dear Ma, I know I've said sorry before, but I've come to understand that apologies without change are just noise. I want to thank you for standing up for you. I needed to see what boundaries looked like in real life. You taught me something no amount of status or success ever could. Theo tells me you're happy. That brings me more comfort than I deserve. I hope one day I can rebuild something honest with you. If not, I understand, but I'll keep working on myself whether or not you're watching. With love, Julian." I folded the letter, held it for a moment, and placed it in the drawer with the other few things I kept. Henry's brooch, a photo of Theo as a toddler, and a pressed flower from my first date with Robert. I didn't need to write back. I didn't need to forgive him in a letter. I already went in my own way on my own time. That fall, Theo brought a girl to dinner. Her name was Kalani. She was warm, observant, and talked with her hands. "Theo told me about your garden," she said excitedly. He wasn't lying. "This balcony is magic." I smiled. "It's not magic. It's just care. That's all anything really needs." As they left that evening, Theo hugged me a little longer than usual. "I want you to know," he whispered, "you've changed my life. Not because of the money or the meals, but because you showed me what love looks like when it refuses to shrink." I hugged him back full and still. I never did return to the house I sold. Sometimes I'd drive past it when I visited the farmer's market nearby. It looked different now. New shutters, a swing set in the yard, toys scattered across the lawn. A different kind of noise filled that space now. The kind that belonged to a young family just starting out. I didn't feel loss. I felt release. Robert and I eventually moved into a cottage together. Not because we needed to, but because we wanted to share coffee every morning without the barrier of 2 front doors. He planted rose bushes outside. I added wind chimes. Every Thursday, Doris still came by for cards and complaints about TV dramas. Theo helped install solar panels, smiling like the boy I once taught to tie his shoes and navigate heartbreak. In quiet moments, I often sat on the porch, wrapped in a knit shawl, watching clouds drift and birds flutter. I'd think about everything that came before, how love can wound and still be real, how boundaries aren't walls, but bridges for self-respect, and how sometimes peace doesn't arrive with fireworks, but with the soft exhale of someone who finally stopped shrinking to fit someone else's idea of enough. People often ask me what changed, what made the difference, and the answer is simple. I did. I stopped believing I had to earn love. I stopped fearing what would happen if I said no. I realized that dignity isn't something others give you. It's something you refuse to let go of. So if you're sitting in your quiet kitchen right now, wondering if it's too late to start over, listen to me. It's not. You can choose yourself today. You can set boundaries and still have love. You can walk away and still carry grace. You can forgive without returning to the fire. You are not selfish for needing peace. You are not wrong for protecting your joy. You are not broken for choosing a life that finally includes you. And if nobody's told you this lately, let me be the first. You deserve to bloom, no matter who tried to bury you. Now, if this story has found its way into your heart, tell me, have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved in order to love yourself better? Have you ever drawn a line and finally felt free? I want to hear your voice. I want to know your story. Leave a comment. Let's talk about healing, about courage, and about the power of choosing peace at any age. And if you haven't already, subscribe and share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that it's never too late to stand tall. We'll be back soon with more stories of real people finding their voice, their worth, and their way home. Until next time, stay strong, stay wise, and always, always stay true to you. Story 2. Leave your house keys. You're not welcome here. That's what my sister said at Thanksgiving dinner, no less. She stood up in front of our entire extended family, raised her glass like she was giving a toast, and instead handed me humiliation. My parents didn't say a word. They just sat there silently watching me be exiled from my own home. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I simply placed my keys on my dinner plate, or right between the mashed potatoes and cranberry sauce, and walked out without looking back. But what they didn't know was this. The house was in my name. And the next morning, when the mortgage company called them to verify a 990 ownership transfer, they had tried to push through behind my back. Everything changed. Let me tell you how my family's betrayal over a house turned into something much bigger. Growing up, I was the dependable one, the responsible daughter, the one who didn't argue, didn't ask for much, and got straight A's without being reminded, while my sister Lily dyed her hair blue, dropped out of college, and burned through every job she touched. I was quietly building a life I thought my parents would be proud of. They weren't. No matter what I achieved, it was treated like background noise to Lily's latest crisis. She was the sensitive one, the creative soul, the one who needed more support. I was just Rochelle, someone who'd be fine no matter what. And because of that, I was left to fend for myself, emotionally, financially, always. When our grandparents passed away, they left behind a weathered old house on the edge of town. It wasn't in perfect shape, but it had character-arched windows, cedar walls, and the kind of ceiling you can only find in places with history. Everyone in the family saw it as a burden. I saw it as home, so I bought it. I bought it from the estate fair and square, using money I'd saved for years from working 70-hour weeks at an architecture firm. No handouts, no co-signers, just me and a terrifying mortgage. I poured everything I had into restoring that house. New roof, refinished floors, updated plumbing. Every nail, every brushstroke was mine. That place wasn't just property, it was proof that I could build something permanent, even when no one believed in me. When I moved in, no one helped. My parents didn't visit. My sister mocked it, calling it a witch's cabin. But suddenly, when the renovations were done, and the house looked like something out of a magazine, everyone remembered it existed, especially Lily. She started dropping hints that house has so much space for one person. Imagine what it'd be like if Tyler had a backyard like that. Her son Tyler was 5. He was sweet and smart, but Lily used him like a human shield to justify anything. And my parents, they encouraged it. "You should share Rachel," my mom said once. "Lily needs stability. You have so much already." I didn't respond, but I remembered when Thanksgiving came around and I offered to host. I thought maybe, just maybe this would be a turning point, a sign that I was finally seen as part of the family again, not just the convenient silent background character. I couldn't have been more wrong. Looking back now, I realized the signs were everywhere. They weren't subtle either. I just didn't want to see them for what they were. It started a few weeks before Thanksgiving. Lily called me out of the blue, unusually cheerful. She asked how the house was coming along, then pivoted almost immediately. "Do you have a will yet? Just curious. You know, with everything you've worked for." "You never know," I laughed it off. "I'm 35, not 80. But she pressed, "Well, it's a big property. What happens if something happens to you?" The conversation stuck with me. Not because of what she said, but how casually she said it. It felt like she wasn't asking out of concern, but calculation. Then my mom came over uninvited for the first time in months. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes sweeping the living room, like she was mentally redecorating it. "I forgot how spacious this place is," she muttered. "You know your sister and Tyler could really thrive in a home like this." She then asked for copies of some of my paperwork just in case something happens. She said again, that phrase was becoming a pattern. She wanted to store a few family documents in my office. Old tax forms, photo albums, even some of my grandparents' estate papers. I should have said no, I didn't. A few days later, I got a message from a distant cousin who had heard I was giving the house to Lily. "Is it true?" she asked everyone, saying your parents are helping transfer it so Tyler has a proper inheritance. I was stunned. "I'm not giving anyone anything," I replied. She didn't answer. I confronted my mother gently that weekend. "I've been hearing rumors," I said about the house about Lily. She didn't deny it, just smiled. Sometimes families rearrange things to meet everyone's needs. You'll understand when you have children. I didn't respond. I didn't need children to understand betrayal. Then came the final straw before the dinner. My father called not to ask how I was, but to ask about the house title. "Is it in your name alone?" he asked. "Did the lawyer file it as personal property or shared family estate?" The word shared made me cold. "Why are you asking?" "Just making sure things are handled properly," he said. "Wouldn't want confusion if something happened." There it was again, if something happened. But still I didn't push back. I wanted peace. I wanted to believe that no one in my family would ever try to take something from me. I was wrong. And on Thanksgiving Day, all those little clues came crashing into clarity with one sentence from Lily that tore through me like a blade. Thanksgiving Day arrived cold and bright, the kind of crisp afternoon that made the leaves glow gold outside the dining room window. I'd spent the morning basting the turkey, lighting cinnamon candles, and setting the long reclaimed oak table with the good china I'd inherited from my grandmother. This wasn't just a dinner. It was a peace offering, a gesture, a chance I hoped to feel like a family again. Everyone showed up around for my parents. Came first, carrying a store-bought pie like it was a peace treaty. Then Lily and her son Tyler, bounding in with a backpack full of action figures and that sticky sweetness only 5-year-olds have. Dinner started well enough. I carved the turkey. We passed dishes and exchanged updates about work and weather. But underneath the polite chatter, I felt it. A strange stillness in the air, like the room was waiting for something. Then Lily stood up. She clinked her fork against her wine glass and smiled broadly, like she was about to give a toast. "I just want to say how thankful I am for family," she began, eyes shining, "and for the way we've come together to make decisions that support each other." My stomach dropped. "I know some things haven't always been fair," she continued, "but today we're going to make things right." She turned to me and with terrifying calmness said, "Rachel, it's time. Leave your house keys. You're not welcome here anymore." Silence. It hit like a slap, echoing louder than any scream. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her, that this was a bad joke, but no one laughed. My parents didn't look shocked. They didn't say a word. My mother stared at her plate. My father sipped his wine like it was water. I looked at Lily. She was still standing, still smiling, as if she had just handed me a party favor instead of a public betrayal. "I don't understand," I managed. My voice barely held steady. "This is my home." Lily shrugged. "The family agreed. You're always alone. You don't need all this space." "Tyler does." We've spoken to a lawyer. It's time to transition the house. The room spun. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I looked at my parents searching for something. Disagreement? Concern? Anything. All I got was silence. So I did the only thing I could do to keep from shattering completely in front of them. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out my keys, and placed them deliberately quietly on my dinner plate, right next to the rosemary, sweet potatoes. Then I stood, adjusted my sweater, and walked to the door. No one followed. I opened it myself, stepped into the freezing air, and closed it behind me. I didn't cry. Not yet. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the couch at my friend Ava's apartment, staring at the ceiling while the events of the dinner replayed in brutal high-definition clarity. Lily's voice. My mother's silence. The sound of my keys hitting porcelain. At some point, exhaustion won out, and I dozed off only to be jolted awake by the sharp ring of my phone at 7:04 a.m. Unknown number. Hello? My voice cracked. Hi, is this Rachel Morgan? A calm professional voice asked. This is Andrew Bell from Redwood Mortgage Services. I'm calling about a recent ownership request on your property. My stomach clenched. What kind of request? There was an attempt made late yesterday to initiate a transfer of ownership for the property at 114 Willow Lane. He said the request included updated contact information and a new co-owner addition. Due to the high value 990, it was flagged for manual review. I sat upright, new co-owner, who the names provided were Lily Morgan and Thomas Morgan. Are you familiar with them? My hands went cold. Yes, that's my sister and my father. He continued carefully now. They also submitted scanned documents verifying family ties and claims the original deed was misfiled, arguing the property was intended as part of a family trust. That's a lie, I said, almost choking. The house is in my name alone. I bought it myself. I have the deed, the closing documents, everything. I believe you, he said, which is why I'm calling the system flagged the Social Security mismatch and something felt off. We've frozen the process for now, but I'd advise you to speak with your attorney as soon as possible. Thank you, I whispered. When I hung up, I sat in silence. Phone still in my hand. There it was. Confirmation. They hadn't just embarrassed me at dinner. They had planned to legally steal my house, all while smiling over mashed potatoes. Within an hour, I was sitting in my lawyer's office. Naomi Feldman had been my closing attorney when I bought the house. She was sharp, no nonsense, and didn't blink as I told her what happened. They tried to transfer the title, she repeated, using a fake family trust. I nodded. Classic soft fraud. She muttered, flipping through her files. They're counting on you not fighting back on you, freezing emotionally, but we're not going to let them. She immediately contacted the county registrar's office to place a protective legal hold on the property. Then she drafted a cease and desist letter and initiated a motion to preemptively challenge any fraudulent title claims. By noon, I had also filed a police report for attempted property fraud. I felt like I was operating on autopilot. Shaky hands, numb face, but at least I was doing something. Still, nothing could quite prepare me for what Naomi discovered next. A document submitted as proof had my forged signature on it. My name, my handwriting, my initials. But I had never signed it. Naomi placed the forged document in front of me. It was nearly perfect. My name, my signature. Even the casual little loop I always added to the AR. Whoever had done this had studied me closely. But the notary stamp was off. And the date? It was 2 months before I'd even moved into the house. This isn't just bold, Naomi said, her voice tight. It's criminal. I stared at the page like it might catch fire. My father had forged my signature before. Once when I was in college, he co-signed a loan application on my behalf to help Lily with tuition. Back then, I had let it go. I told myself it was family. This time was different. This time, they were trying to erase me. Naomi wasted no time. She contacted a handwriting expert to verify the forgery and filed an emergency injunction with the local housing court. We had to stop the transfer before it slipped through some administrative crack within 24 hours. The judge approved the injunction and set a hearing date for the following week. Meanwhile, I started receiving messages from Lily. I know this feels harsh, but we had to act before things got too complicated. Tyler needs this house from my mother. You always had trouble sharing. We're just balancing the scales. It's nothing personal, nothing personal. The woman who carried me, whose voice used to read me stories at night, had signed off on stealing my home and called it balance. I didn't reply. Instead, I printed every message. I documented every call. I stayed at Ava's apartment, updated my bank alerts, added video surveillance to the house, and froze my credit. But it didn't stop them from showing up. 2 days before the hearing, Lily, my parents, and a man in a blazer showed up at my house. They tried to access it. My security system caught them attempting to use the spare key I'd forgotten was still taped inside the garden shed. When it didn't work, they stood on the porch for nearly an hour, talking, filming, smiling. The footage went straight to Naomi, who forwarded it to the judge as proof of intimidation and continued attempted access. They think they're untouchable, Naomi said, but they're about to learn otherwise. When the court date arrived, I walked into the courthouse with Naomi at my side and trembling legs beneath me. My family sat across the aisle. My father wouldn't look at me. My mother stared daggers. Lily smiled like we were at a brunch. Their lawyer, a smooth-talking estate attorney named Clark, opened with, "This is a tragic family misunderstanding that should never have reached court." My clients believed they were fulfilling the wishes of the Morgan family legacy. Naomi stood. What legacy involves forged signatures, unauthorized title transfers, and illegal impersonation? Clark flinched. Naomi walked the court through the entire timeline, the deed in my name, the mortgage fully paid from my account, the suspicious document with inconsistent notary marks, the expert report confirming the signature was not mine, the messages, the surveillance footage, everything when I testified. My voice shook, but I didn't stop. I told the judge about the dinner, the silence, the way no one stopped Lily. I described how they'd always expected me to be the quiet one, the one who wouldn't fight. But I am fighting, I said quietly, because if I don't, they'll do this again. To me, to someone else. They don't believe I deserve to own anything they can't control. Lily's smile faded. Then when the judge ruled, it was swift. This court finds the attempted transfer unlawful, further based on the evidence of forgery and intimidation. I'm authorizing a temporary restraining order and referring this case for criminal investigation. Miss Morgan retains full and exclusive ownership. I didn't cry, I didn't cheer, I just breathed. It was over, or so I thought. The restraining order gave me 90 days of space, but silence wasn't peace. My parents didn't try to reach me directly again. Instead, I started getting emails from extended family members. Some were curious, some accusatory. "I heard you took your family to court over a house. Your mom's been crying every night. Lily's just trying to raise a child. Rachel, you always were private." Private, that was the word they used instead of independent, instead of boundary setting, instead of the only one who ever paid her own bills. I didn't respond. Instead, I sat on the floor of my now empty house, surrounded by files, surveillance printouts, the restraining order documents, and a deep, relentless ache in my chest. I had one, but I no longer felt like this house was mine. Not because they deserved it, but because I couldn't breathe inside it anymore. Every corner reminded me of a conversation. I now questioned every window, echoed their silence. Every floorboard, once sanded by hand, now felt like part of a battlefield. So I made a decision. I listed the house for sale. It took less than 3 weeks. A young couple, bright in love, pregnant with their first child, fell in love with it the moment they stepped inside. I watched them walk through the garden I had rebuilt, touch the walls I had painted, and I felt something strange and liberating. Relief. I signed the papers. I handed them the keys. And for the first time since Thanksgiving, I smiled without effort. With a portion of the proceeds, I established a small foundation, the Haven Fund. It would provide legal support and emergency housing grants for women facing family-based financial abuse. I partnered with Naomi. We built something real out of something rotten. People ask why I didn't just keep the house and move on, but I wasn't interested in rebuilding over ashes. I wanted clean ground. I wanted to choose joy without ghosts haunting the walls. I found a small loft in a converted textile mill across town. Open beams, brick walls, sun flooding in every morning. It wasn't grand. It wasn't inherited. It was entirely mine, built from nothing but earned peace. I never spoke to Lily again. My mother sent one final message, handwritten, If you'd rather live without us, so be it. But we didn't raise you to be this cold." I didn't answer because the truth is they didn't raise me. They raised a version of me they could manage. The rest I raised on my own. 1 year later, I hosted Thanksgiving again. Not in that old house. Someone else was making memories there now. And I was glad for that. This time, it was in my loft. The ceilings were lower, the table smaller, but the laughter was louder. Ava came early and brought candles. Naomi arrived with a bottle of wine and a stack of coasters shaped like tiny houses. My coworker Julian brought his famously dry cornbread, and even my upstairs neighbor stopped by with pumpkin pie. She swore she didn't burn. She did. There were no place cards, no family politics, no chairs held by people silently watching you get exiled. Just warmth and music and people who showed up because they wanted to, not because they felt entitled to a seat. At one point, Ava raised her glass and said to Rachel, "For building a life you don't have to apologize for." Everyone clinked glasses. I didn't cry, but the lump in my throat was real. Later that night, after the last dish had been washed and the last candle had flickered out, I stood by the window and looked out at the quiet street below. A year ago, I had left my keys on a dinner plate and walked out of a house that no longer felt safe. Today, I locked the door behind people I trusted and felt completely at home. That's the thing about freedom. It doesn't always come with a parade. Sometimes it arrives in stillness and peace, in the quiet understanding that you don't owe your life to people who only show up to take. I didn't rebuild the same life they tried to take from me. I built something better. Not in spite of the betrayal, but because I finally understood that love without respect isn't love and family. Family isn't who shares your blood. It's who honors your boundaries, celebrates your growth, and never demands the keys to your soul in exchange for their approval.